Hey everybody, this is Noah aka Doma Do Good, and today I want to talk to you about miniature bases. Specifically, my go-to recipe for miniature bases. This could be for your D&D miniatures, this could be for a diorama, this could be a display board, this could be for Warhammer or other tabletop war games or whatever it happens to be. But I use this in a lot of different things, and so I wanted to share this recipe because I believe it's fast, pretty cost effective, yields a good result, and I didn't really have anybody to show or tell me about it other than just getting on the internet and looking for a bunch of search stuff and putting things together. So I want to put all the things I learned in one place to give you a flexible recipe that maybe can help you with the enrichment and enjoyment of your hobby. So for me, I need an outlet that is both competitive and creative. So events plus actually doing the hobby. Well, when I started, I was really just doing those very basic bases, some tufts and some crackle paint. Eventually, seeing everybody else, I really wanted some more interesting bases, but I didn't want to spend a bunch of time doing it, and I didn't want, knowing as an ADHD kid, I didn't want something that was going to be so complicated when I want to do it. And that brought me to this recipe here, my little ghost guy. So what that recipe basically is any base you want plus some modeling glue. In this case, I'm using the Gorilla Green Top gel glue. I prefer blue top, but I didn't have any on hand right now. If you want some bigger pieces of stuff, I like cork. You can use rocks or whatever. But for today, I'm using these Battlefield rocks from Army Painter. Or you can just rip off some pieces of cork. Then you're also going to need your favorite coffee. For me, I'm using this Breakfast Blend K-Cup. And then some paints. Now, I use a bunch of different paints for a bunch of different reasons in this, but you can really stop anywhere in the process that you're happy with. But we'll go through those real quick. So, black primer of any kind. Today I'm using Army Painter black primer because it was what I had available. Then you're going to want something like, for instance, for this earth recipe, you want a dark color to start with. For me, it's Gorthor brown, and I use that as a dry brush over my base of Agrellan earth. So instead of Gorthor brown today, I'm using Wasteland brown from Tooth and Coats. Once we put our dry brush on, we'll go up to XV88. Really nice kind of lighter brown color. And then we'll highlight with Zandry dust. Then we'll do our very last highlight with Ivory Tusk, which is like an off-white. And use a dark color. I'm going to use this Death Reaper, which has seen better days, for the rims. And then also at one point we're going to do a shade. I'm going to use this Karak Earth shade, but you can also create your own shade just by diluting paint. This is a brown shade, and I don't really like the base to be as dark as like Gnome Oil would make it, so this is a good mid-tone for me. So I use Karak Earth shade. So how does this process go? First thing we're going to do is we're going to take a base, we're going to put some glue on it, we're going to put down our large piece of cork or debris. If you don't have a technical paint, you can add baking soda to the glue. You just want to sprinkle it on, not just dump it, but sprinkling it on, it'll catalyze the glue and create a really flaky, grainy, rough texture. Also, you're going to add the coffee grounds and the large piece of cork. Once that's done and all dried up, should only take about 10-15 minutes once it's hit with a black primer, we're going to throw on our Agrellan Earth crackle paint or whatever crackle paint color you want to use. If you don't have the crackle paint, you can just use a really light coat of whatever color you're looking for over the top of the baking soda plus coffee grounds mix. That takes a little longer to dry. You can use anything that generates heat, or like a UV cradle, a hair dryer, a heat lamp, anything like that to speed it up. Otherwise, it'll take an hour or two to get to a point where you can actually work with it. But I like to use my UV cradle or a hair dryer to kind of speed this up. Once it's dry enough, you're going to add your Karak Earth shade. You can just add it on pretty liberally. If you get pooling, that's okay. You're going to cover a lot of it up with the dry brushing, so you don't have to be really careful about it. I try to spread out the pooling and stuff and sop a little bit of it up. But if you make some mistakes or you have some big pools, it doesn't matter. So now, once that's dry, usually about an hour, but again, much faster if you have some type of heat element that you can use. I'm going to then do a dry brush of that Wasteland brown or Gorthor brown. It's still a dark color, just like a shade up from where it currently is. And I'm really going to hit the whole thing with a dry brush. So a dry brush being just a little bit of paint on the end of a wide, thick brush. I like these kind of makeup brush style brushes. This one's from Army Painter. You can use actual makeup brushes. I'm just going to hit the whole thing. You don't want to push hard because you don't want necessarily that brown to get into all the deepest recesses, but you can basically cover the whole base. We're going to move up to that XV88. So the XV88 is going to be a slightly lighter color. You want to hit mostly just the raised rough gravel pieces and the rock. That's where you want to focus. You want to really lighten up the color of the whatever raised pieces you have and just touching on the gravel or the little raises in elevation. Then you're going to have two more highlights here. One is going to be that Zandry dust. That's going to be your topmost general highlight. I touched a little bit down here in areas where I wanted to be brighter. I really hit the rock a little heavier. And then I highlight the edges of the rock with another dry brush of ivory tusk or Karak stone or any other kind of off-white khaki color. The last thing we're going to do is add our tufts. Just a little bit of glue, or a lot of them have that adhesive piece on the bottom. You can stick right on, and that brings you to this. Now, I like to have a rim, so I use a little bit of dark reaper to create a clean rim so that there looks like there's a clear division between the board and the actual setting that the miniature is on. So on a larger scale, this is for a breacher, or it also could be like a dreadnought, but a larger model for my AdMech army. You can see here I also added a little bit of the astrogranite to break up the colors a little bit, but otherwise was exactly the same as the process I just walked you through. A couple things you can do is that at this stage you can add a gloss varnish to cause the crackle paint to actually fracture more and make more pronounced cracks. If it does that though, it can get a little flaky. So if it does get flaky, hitting it with a varnish at this point as well can seal it. That's one of the reasons I like to use the gloss agri clear shade, because it actually seals it too a little better, and then it stands up better to your dry brush when you're going. If the base ends up a little too shiny for you, you can hit with a matte varnish at any point just to kind of dull back some of the shine, but it's all up to your personal preference. Now you can stop anywhere along this spectrum when you get to somewhere you like, and you can change out this color for any color that matches what you're trying to go for. So you can switch this out to astrogranite. Now it looks more like a gravelly kind of debris setting. You could switch it out to Mars for that kind of red earth look. You could switch it out to more like the light sandy colors. And whichever color you switch it over to will just change kind of this end result. But it makes this recipe really adaptable. Just, you're going to switch your technical paint and your highlights, and then you're good. So hopefully this makes it a little bit easier for you to find enjoyment and enrichment in your hobby, and hopefully I could be of help. Thank you.